Hello, YouTube fans. Here again. And this one's from my nephew. My nephew wanted me to talk about it, and I figured why not, why not? That being wrestling. Why not the golden days of wrestling? So I'm going to talk a little bit about golden days of wrestling and probably talk a few about these. More of the golden days of wrestling, from the days of British wrestling, the days of WCW, WWF, and I'm calling it WWE, whatever they call it nowadays. To me, it's WWF. And those golden days of wrestling, why not? Why not? But without ado, why not this one? So, back in the golden days of the UK, back from let's say the 60s, the 70s, and a bit of the 80s, we had what we call British wrestling. And we had date stars, let's say like Big Daddy, Giant A Stats, and Pat Roach. You know who Pat Roach is? Think of the guy that played in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he played in that of the villains in the indie films. But this was the days when he was a wrestler. And I mean, it was very good in them days. And in all fair said and done, we all know the highlight of Big Daddy and Giant Stats. They always had big fights. And there's one thing I love about the golden days of British wrestling, what they don't do nowadays. In them days, they throw each other on the floor, they hold each other, one, two, three, you're out. But they did it in rounds. So it was a bit like boxing when you think about it. You know, in boxing, you have round one, round two, so they go on. And that's what they did back in the golden days of British wrestling. You know what I mean? And sad to say, through the 80s, it started to die out. And then we had what they call for the days of WWF. And I like WWF. I mean, I like it. You know what I mean? I'm not calling it WWE because Wildlife don't like the whole of the name. I remember it as a kid, back in the days when Sky TV was worth a shit. And I remember the days when it was called WWF. And you had other date wrestlers. You had others. You had Olden. You had then Jake the Snake. Let's not forget Jake the Snake. You had Dynamite, who was well known for being in British wrestling, and then you had British Bulldog, may he rest in peace. And then as the days went on, you had The Undertaker. So you had quite a lot of big wrestling back in the golden days of WWF. And that's what I like them. I remember the days when you had SummerSlam, and you had WrestleMania, and you had the Survival Series. So you had that a lot of big events, what was going on, and you know what I mean, that was the highlight of Star TV. And I let people into a secret. Why not? Why not? When I was a stooler, that was the highlight of when I was finishing school. Not finishing because I wanted to finish. I mean, finishing meaning time to get home time. I could not wait to get home, put on Sky TV and what's having on Sky One wrestling. Wrestling to me was like the best thing ever. I could not wait to see the big offence, whether it be Holden taking on The Undertaker or taking on, if I remember right there, one of the Giant. Don't forget him. You know what I mean? And taking on big fights. So you have him on Andre the Giant taking on Holden, or Sergeant Slaughter taking on Holden, whether it be the WrestleManias, whether it be the Royal Rumbles. And these big events, it was the highlight. And let's not forget, back then you had the best thing ever. You had, you always sometimes saw a big event on Sky Movies. This is when Sky TV, in my eyes, was worth a shit. And wrestling was date then. And in the days of British wrestling, you always had a dudder and a badder. I mean, you had your badder, you had your dudder, and it was dating them days. You was a kid, you loved it. You know what I mean? And I loved it back then, and I loved it in the days when we got to the American wrestling. A little bit different than the British wrestling. They didn't do the rounds like they did in the days of boxing. It was a straightforward fight. And that's what was good about it, you know what I mean? And you had your duddies, you had your baddies, and back in them days, whether it be the 80s to the 90s, I just wrestling it's due. I do it it's due. This is what you don't see nowadays in wrestling. This is something you don't see. It's called character. Say it again. Character. You had characters back then, whether it be Tate the Snake, whether it be the Mere and Dire Man. I remember singing this theme song loads and loads of times. Sergeant Sorter. The list goes on. The list goes on. These were called characters. They had a tone, they had a character, not just a theme song. You had a character with it, whether it be the British Bulldog. And you know what I mean? And it's sad in one way. Some of the best wrestlers nowadays are no longer with us. May they rest in peace. They're either too old or they're no longer with us. May they rest in peace. But I remember them days. I remember them well. I remember when I was a kid. And that was the highlight of Sky TV. And then as some of the days came on for the early 90s as well as the 80s, you had your WCW. And again, you've had big highlights of WCW. You know, you had Sting and you had all these other day wrestlers. I remember that. I remember once, and this was the thing, was to market Robocop 2. 1990, I'm right, 1990, the second Robocop film after the dosing biddy of Robocop. The big dosing sequel would have been Robocop 2. And to market that, they had some guy dressed up as Robocop. They had Sting in these bars. And Robocop would come out, break the bars open, and free Sting so we could have a fight. And I love it. I love it. That was the highlight. I mean, you always had big events like that, and that's what I loved about wrestling. It wasn't just a sport. It was not just a sport. It was an event. It was an event. You know what I mean? Yes, you know it's stage. Yes, you know it's entertainment. But to me, that's what I loved about it. It wasn't just sport. It wasn't just let's see someone have a fight. It was entertainment. People say, "Oh, it's put on." So fucking what? Some people did get injured doing wrestling. I remember seeing behind the scenes where wrestlers had stitches on the back of the heads. They had stitches here, stitches everywhere. They had a doctor with a first aid kit behind the scenes. So not always was put on. The hell with the shit that wrestling's put on. It's not. It's not. And I love the offence. I remember all the offence. I remember once when they buried the Undertaker and they buried him alive and somehow he come back. I remember that highlight. And there's a lot of these state shows of entertainment. A lot of famous people made disappearances, let's say in the golden days of WrestleMania. You know what I mean? You've had a lot. Some are sadly no longer with us, whether it be singers, whether it be actors. I remember The Fire, and I had a big trust on The Fire. You know, I remember the movie The Fire. And I mean, think right, if we're right and wrong, I think it was WrestleMania 2. A Fire made a test appearance. Very nice. And I do remember, with all without ado, you would not have had Mr. T. Roughly before we had, well, actually, I'm Monday because I remember Mr. T, we all know in the 18, and we all remember him Rocky 3. He was also a wrestler, and he used to be partners with Hulk Hogan back in the golden days of wrestling, before he decided to go more into movies, before he decided to hell with it. I'm going to stick with the 18. He was Hulk Hogan's partner. So there's things like that I remember in the golden days of wrestling, and I love wrestling. It's not as good now as it used to be, but I can still watch it. It's too fun, it's too entertaining to see these big fights before they ruin it all and charge people to watch them. Which we already know that. My rant of Sky could probably still be there. A couple of years ago now, I did a rant on Sky TV. If it's still there, not been removed, check it out. But yeah, I like wrestling back in that era, whether it be Holden, whether it be the Dynamite Kid, whether it be the British Bulldog, whether it be Big Daddy, whether it be Sting. The list goes on. The list goes on. But yeah, it's a bit of the golden days of memory lane of wrestling. If there's ever a fighter you remember in wrestling, what you love, you remember, let me know. Be interesting to know. Or even boxing or anything. But into them, be smart, be safe, and I'll see you later.